So I'm gonna kind of just do my little intro,
Okay.
have you say hello,
Okay.
and then I'll
Is it
probably
interview format?
it'll be interview format.
Okay.
So I'm gonna be spouting off a few things just for the show, and then we'll
Excellent.
get into it.
All right.
Get this situated.
I tell you, technology today, you can
Something
do
else.
anything, anywhere.
I love it.
Me
I
too.
love it, man.
Me too.
All right, so here we go. Oh, no. Gotta do one other thing. Gotta get both of these recording.
And this is my mic. And how close do I have to be?
You good.
Okay.
It picks up everything. I just, as long as it's,
Right.
directed towards you, we good.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, technology's a wonderful thing.
something else.
Yeah, it's so funny. When I first started this campaign, my team was like, "Oh yeah, you got like Snapchat and
Oh,
you
my
got this
God.
and I when I tell young folks that, what's your Snapchat? Don't ask me. Right? Ask Anna, right? My campaign manager.
Hey, I'm 33. I don't even do Snapchat. Like I can't keep up with it. I got Facebook,
Right.
Instagram. I barely do Twitter. You know.
Me too. Me too. I have a Twitter account, but yeah,
Yeah.
I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter. Always, you have 106 notifications. You have 108 notifications. Like yeah, whatever.
Especially for somebody like you, where the public always got something to say. Like
Yes,
I'm sure your
yes.
notifications would be
Oh
crazy.
yeah, people get annoyed. I thought you cared about the people. And so I have to respond. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not actually spending my time on Twitter nowadays. I'm actually a little busy.
I'm actually campaigning.
I'm actually running for public office, right? So if you wanted more direct, how about call it my campaign?
Man,
Somebody will get back to you soon.
or come to the house party. How about that?
Right. Give some money.
All right, here we go. What up, y'all? I want to welcome you all back to the Sox and Sandals Podcast, where society, culture, history, and religion collide, and we unapologetically discuss our worldviews. It's your boy Emmanuel. I am not in the kitchen right now. I'm in the humble abode of Miss Ann Hardesty. Joanne, say hello to the people.
It is my pleasure. Hello, people.
Yes. So we're about to get into a very good discussion with Joanne as she tells us about what she's going to do for her campaign and whatnot. But first things first, man, I want to say a big thank you to everyone that's been listening. The month of March has been amazing. Our biggest month to date. I've been doing this for about a year, and really in 2018, out of all the total listens that I've had for this podcast, 45% of my listens have come in these past 3 months, and March was amazing.
Wow.
So yes,
Excellent.
and so really quickly, I just want to shout out because SoundCloud does track the stats and whatnot. So I want to shout out the top 10 cities of the month of March. Man, I appreciate y'all for listening. Number 10, Albany, Oregon. I don't even know who's in Albany. I don't know anybody there, but hey, shout out to
they know
Albany.
you.
They know me. All right. So number 9, Stone Mountain, Georgia. Whoever you are, and if when I'm calling out these cities, man, I don't know who y'all is. You know what I mean? So hit me up on Twitter at SXSNDLS, on Instagram at SXSNDLS, and yeah, let me know who you are, what your favorite episode is, and whatnot. I'll probably try to do some type of
Analysis.
I don't know, analysis, but also like a contest or something, or
Oh.
a little raffle or something. I want to show y'all a little appreciation.
I was just gonna say you want to appreciate your listeners.
Yeah,
yes.
for sure, definitely. So number 8, Hillsboro. Number 7, my home away from home, Houston, Texas. Went to Texas Southern University for college. So
Wow.
yeah,
Excellent.
yeah.
Excellent.
Number 6, Brooklyn, New York.
Hey.
Shout out to Brooklyn.
Hey.
Let's go. That's us. Number 5, Mountain View, California. I've been seeing Mountain View a lot. I don't know who's down there, but hey, y'all, hit me up. Let me know who you are. Number 4, Vancouver, of course, right
Makes
over the
sense.
bridge. Ashburn, Virginia.
Oh.
Whoever is in Ashburn, let me know who you are.
Yeah.
I think you know me, and I think I know who you are, but I don't want to say your name because I don't want to be wrong.
Right.
But yeah, Ashburn, Virginia, Seattle, and of course, number 1, Portland.
Excellent.
Top 7 countries. Number 7, Russia. Number 6, the UK. Number 5, Switzerland. Number 4, India. 3, Germany. 2, Canada. And of course, number 1, United States. So, yeah, man, I appreciate everybody that's been listening. Shout out to all of my collaborators. Let's see, the first episode that we did in March was with Brandon Hardaway, Mental Health is Wealth. He works at the Abel Gordley Center.
Oh, yeah, Center for Healing. Yes, I'm
exactly.
on board. Yes.
So he works there, and he also has his own private practice. So we talked about mental health in the Black community and how important that is,
Absolutely.
So yeah. So shout out to Brandon, William Johnson. We did the Toxic Masculinity series, and that was really good. Tony Funches, man, I appreciate you We did the Wakanda Matters. It was kind of like a play on Black Lives Matter. We were talking about the guiding principles and whatnot.
Yes.
So we had that, and my brother Paul Henry Grice III, Beyond Expectations. He talked about what he's been doing for his nonprofit Liberation Literacy. So once again, man, I appreciate everybody who's been contributing and listening and whatnot. But now on to my guest.
All right.
It's Ann Hardesty. Joanne, how you doing today?
I am doing fabulous. I am so grateful that you are here and we're having this conversation.
No doubt, me as well. So I appreciate you opening up your home and making this happen. So tell everybody, who you are, where you're from, and why you're running for Portland
City Council, Position 3.
Position 3.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's the one currently held by Dan Salzman.
Okay. I mean, he's been there for a long time.
16 years.
16 years.
Yes. I can tell you the day I knew we had the wrong people on the city council.
Okay.
It was October 2016. I showed up at City Hall because I heard the Portland Police Union's contract had been opened and renegotiated in secret. And it was on the fast track to be passed by City Council that day. So I show up with my written testimony. I'm all ready to go in and do my thing with my 2 to 3 minutes that they give me. I show up, and riot police are surrounding City Hall. Homeland Security, TriMet, Gresham, Portland, I mean, in full riot gear, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So come to find out, the mayor had said that he had a credible source that said there would be disruption at the city council meeting. I thought to myself, do you think you open a police contract in private, you secretly renegotiate it, and now it's on the fast track before the public's had a chance to really review it? You think people are going to be a little annoyed?
Right.
So anyway, I get inside, and I call our lawyer with the NAACP. I was the NAACP Portland president at that time. And so I call our lawyer because I'm like, this got to be illegal. You can't shut the public out of a public policy conversation. So she calls me back a little while later and says, if one city council member had objected, it would have been illegal for the mayor to put riot police outside City Hall. But because no one did, it was absolutely legal. So that was the day I knew it wasn't possible that we had the right people in those seats if they were okay with that, right? Wow. And so because I knew there were 2 seats coming up this year, that day really compelled me to start thinking about this has to change. And so what I decided to do was to get a group of friends together and start talking about how do we change that dynamic on the city council. And I have to say I had a group of about 25 folks who volunteered hundreds of hours. And these were professionals who volunteered their professional expertise to help me really think through my campaign. I moved here January 1st, 1990, and I've done a lot of things in this community. So I'm known by different communities. I've had a radio show on KBOO for over 20 years.
Yeah, I was reading about that.
Yes, called Voices from the Edge. I will be back after I win.
After you win, of course. We're going to speak that into existence.
That's right. And it will be called Voices from the Edge of City Hall. So I am very excited about continuing that long-term effort with community media. Because it's vital today in this political climate. So anyway, so my friends and I got together and developed a plan about how I was going to both roll out my announcement and B, how we were going to be prepared for people to volunteer. I knew from the beginning I would not raise the most money, but I also knew I'd be able to raise money to be competitive and that I had a secret weapon. And my secret weapon was people. I had people all over the city who were thrilled, excited about me running, right? So I knew I had a secret weapon that nobody else could match, right? And so in August, I made an appointment, August last year, I made an appointment to go talk to Dan Salzman because I've known him his entire time in public office. I worked for Bev Stein at Multnomah County when he was there, and when he ran against Tanya Collier for the city council seat, I've worked with him throughout that time. So no personal issues with Dan Salzman. I just personally felt like no one's entitled to a seat for 16 years. And he had boldly announced after the November 2016 election, he was running for re-election because he just wanted one more term before he retired, right? And I thought to myself, you're not entitled to, you have to actually earn that, right? And so I made an appointment because I know his administrative assistant very well, and asked her to make an appointment between just him and I. And of course, as we got closer to the date, he had her call me and said, "Well, what's this about?" And I said, "It's private." Then a couple of days before the meeting, she calls and says, "Dan wants to know if he can bring his chief of staff." I said, "No," because my goal was to be able to eyeball Dan and have this conversation.
Yeah.
And so what I said to him was, "Dan, I've known you for a lot of years. I have no personal issues with you, but I think we need a new kind of leadership, and I will be running for your seat." Apparently in polite Portland, that was actually radical, right? I thought, because I'd had this long history with this gentleman, that it was the respectful thing to do, rather than have him read it in the paper or hear it on the radio, right? I thought, this is what adults do, right? Adults look you in the eye and say, "Here's my position, and I just wanted to give you a heads up." And he said, and so it was a very short conversation. He asked me why, and I said, "Because you've been here a long, long, long time, and I believe people are ready for new leadership." I expected that he would do what other politicians have done over the holidays. I met with my family, and my family and I have agreed. I've served well, and it's time for me to just step back. Right? That's what I was hoping for. Unfortunately, my effort was too good, because 2.5 weeks after my meeting, he announced that he was going to retire and not seek re-election.
Wow.
And this was even after he'd already started raising money, was already seeking endorsements. I mean, he was already in campaign mode.
So he didn't want to. He didn't want to compete.
He didn't want a real fight.
Yeah,
because he knew side by side there'd be no comparison.
Ooh.
He knew that.
Wow.
And so
that's powerful.
He decided, I'm just gonna retire. Right. I was too good. I wish I'd have waited until like December to have that conversation. Right. But I knew I was taking on an incumbent, and when many times I get frustrated during election season because people file at the last minute to run against an incumbent. There's absolutely nothing you can do against an incumbent when you file at the filing deadline, right? Nothing, right? You don't have the time to actually build the base you need. My advantage was because I have had so many lives in this community that people could look to what I've done in the past. NAACP is a great example. In 2015, when the NAACP was about to have elections, its reputation was in the toilet. It had no respect in the community.
I'll get that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'll get it.
Okay, thank you.
Keep talking.
NAACP's reputation had been very badly tarnished. And I was searching for someone to run for president. I had no desire to run for president. And as I would engage with people, people would say, "Well, I will do this if you run for president," right? I'll run, but I'm not going to run. I don't want to be president, right? And so ultimately, I ended up deciding, okay, I'll run for president. And I built a great team, because the NAACP is not about an individual. It's a team. It's a team effort, because everybody's volunteers. I can't tell you how many people who are unfamiliar with the NAACP that thinks that the president gets a 6-figure income, that they got an expense account, and it's all paid for by the federal government. I mean, if you ever read the comment sections, whenever there's an NAACP quote, it absolutely is fascinating. It's like, where do people get that?
Oh, they think they know it all.
They think they know, but they don't. And so I knew that there were a lot of people from different walks of life who would want to help with this campaign. And I have been overwhelmed with support. My kickoff was August 21st of last year. We had over 300 people at the kickoff. We raised $5,000 that day. From $5 contributions to $500 contribution. But the one that still tears me up was the $5 contribution. Because when you looked at those wrinkled, worn $1 bills, you knew that that person was investing in the city council race, right? It cost that person more to give that $5 than it did that person to write that $500 check, right?
So true,
And I mean, when I would talk about that, I would tear up because I felt it. I felt that this is a person that didn't have a lot, but the little they had, they wanted to invest in this campaign. Because this campaign is about people. Yeah. It's about who's been left out, right? Do you want me to tell you what the 4 issues are I'm running on? Or do you want to go somewhere else first?
We'll go a little bit different route. I do want to say that I think I told you at Maranatha after the Black Voices candidates forum when we met. The second time, the first time I met you was at what school? Warner Pacific. It was the Baltimore and Ferguson.
Oh yes.
That thing
with Reverend Sekou.
Yes. Sekou Smith. Last name?
Sekou is his last name.
Something.
Can't remember the first name.
Yeah.
Sekou is his last name.
And you were there, and you were the first person that I ever heard talk about Keaton Otis.
Ah, yes.
And the justice for Keaton Otis.
Yes.
I went to high school with Keaton.
Did you?
That was my guy. You know what I mean? Like, and I was in college when that happened, when he got killed.
Right.
So I just heard about it. People told me the story.
Right.
And I remember hearing the story, and it never made sense.
Yes, right.
Because I know Keaton. He's like the fun-loving, kind of goofy, like funny guy.
Right.
Like, he's the jokester.
Uh-huh.
And so to hear my friends from high school tell me, oh, Keaton was surrounded by the police and he shot at a cop. I said, Keaton?
Right.
Like, never been in trouble, never been to jail.
Right.
Does not known to own a gun.
Right.
Like, he shot at a police officer? Like, really?
Right.
But that was the story. Oh, yeah, man, he had mental problems.
Yes.
And that's like, everybody just believed what was given to them.
Yes.
And you were the first person to speak truth to that situation and open my eyes to it. And I went and watched the video, and I was just like, wow, this is crazy.
That, is interesting because just last week, the city auditor, which is an independent elected leader, produced 2 reports on the Gang Enforcement Task Force. Looked at data from 2016. They made 1,800 encounters with community members in 2016. There are 28 members of the Gang Enforcement Unit. They don't take calls. They don't participate unless there's an emergency in any other policing activity. They have free reign to go out and look for gang members, right? 90%, I will say this again, 90% of the people the Gang Enforcement Unit pulled over in 2016 were African Americans.
Surprise.
90% in a city with a 6% African American population. Now, prior to me reading the auditor's report, I have been saying for years, because the information we, the public, get about what happens in the police bureau, we get directly from the police. We have no direct access, right? So we take their information that they share with us. I thought 44% was the number of people, was the total of the gang stops were 44%.
Because that was initially reported.
That's what they've been reporting since 2012, when they released the first stop data. And it hasn't changed since 2012, right? So what was interesting to me was, now here I am, I'm someone in the know. I've been doing police accountability for over 20 years. Every time a truly independent source goes into the Portland Police Bureau, we find chaos. We find a lack of supervision, a lack of standards, a lack of protocols, over and over and over again. But because the public gets information from the police tell us where crime's happening, who's committing crime, who the criminals are, how much money they need, what weapons they need. The police are the only ones to give us information about that, right? And so this audit is key. I would encourage your listeners to go online, City of Portland Auditor's Office. Both reports are online. But here's the thing. So 90% of their stops are of African Americans. Let's talk about prosecution. Out of the 90% of African Americans they stop, their entire prosecution for those 1,800 encounters, 19% of their stops lead to any kind of criminal prosecution. only 2% had any weapons. When the researcher asked, so what's the criteria you use to determine whether or not a gang member is in a car? They don't have any. It is the officer's experience and expertise that determine. But clearly, it's failing miserably, right? Because if you're stopping 1,800 people and you're only prosecuting less than 20% of the people that you're stopping, right? There's a disconnect there. The fact that even before this report, no one on the city council had the intellectual curiosity to ask why in a city with a 6% black population, 44% of the stops were African American, right? I mean, it's like, that's just outrageous, right? And even if you believe the police, that gang activity happens between 12 and 24, how many times do we stop every 12 to 24-year-old black child in the city of Portland? It's got to be like overwhelming, right? And so the fact that we don't have political leaders who dig into that and ask hard questions is a problem.
So that leads me to one, because I want to talk about the police thing.
All right.
But
I will go wherever you want me to.
The question that I had, I was like, I have to ask you this question.
Okay.
So, and I got to read it because I don't want to mess it up.
I hear you.
So, it has been said that it is not possible to effectively speak and or act to eliminate any major problem that involves people without first eliminating the problem of white supremacy and or racism in every area of activity. So that's economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. So in what way do you plan to aid in resisting white supremacy while working with a cacophony of liberal white people who think they're not racist because they voted for Obama and have Black Lives Matter signs in their yard? Like I said, when you said that earlier, I was like, you already.
Right.
So how do you plan on speaking to? Because when you say no one had the intellectual
Curiosity, right?
White supremacy is on autopilot.
Yes.
They don't care as long as in my view of it, outside looking in.
Right.
I'm young, but I haven't been around. But from what I can see, what I can tell, what I've read in history, white supremacy is going to white supremacize.
Yes.
So if they say, all right, you handling the niggas in the hood, cool.
Yes.
We're not going. I don't want to ask no questions.
Right. You do what you got to do.
You do what you do.
You do what you got to do.
Deal with just deal with them. Exactly.
Right.
Or just not even keep us safe. Keep them in their place.
In their place where they belong. Right.
Because we're not even harming them.
Right.
This is violence within young kids in their own neighborhood. Just not harming no white people.
Yes.
So how do you plan to speak to that type
I
of white
spent
people?
a lot of time talking to white liberal Portland.
Yeah.
As you know, 47,000 people moved here last year. There'll be another 40.
I didn't know it was that much. God.
47,000 will be moving here this year, right?
Okay.
And so we have two white liberal Portlands, right? We have the new arrivals who think everything cool happened because they showed up, right? And then we have the folks who've lived here for a long time. And so I spend time reminding people of Oregon's history. Oregon being the only state allowed into the Union with its slave. Oregon being the first state, the first law Oregon passed was the one that excluded black people from being able to live in the state. I have to remind white liberal Portland that this is our legacy. This is our history, right? This is what the birth of Oregon was created as a white homeland, right? There was never any intentions of any people of color being here permanently except for the slave force, right? Other than that, they expected us to be gone. The fact that Portlandia has created this fantasy version of Portland is part of the problem. Because many people move here looking for Portlandia, and what they find is an urban community that is on the cusp. It's on the cusp of being a rich playground for white wealthy people, and one where people of color and low-income people are pushed out to the edges of the city, right? So what I know is that a lot of white people woke up after Donald Trump got elected. In fact, I spent the first 6 months after his election going to Beaverton, Lake Oswego, Hillsborough, talking to primarily white congregations about their role in eliminating white supremacy and fighting for a racially just society. Guess what I found? They're starved to know what to do.
Really?
People are so immobilized by not having the perfect answer, right? And in a place like the Pacific Northwest, where I call it Portland politeness, right? Portland politeness doesn't allow us to talk about real issues, right? We will spend 2 hours in a meeting and walk out of it and have no clue what the heck the decision was that was made.
Right.
And it's because we don't openly and honestly talk directly about racism, and the role that that has played in Oregon since its inception, right? Because we want to believe that we're progressive, right? And we treat everybody the same,
and
right?
we embrace diversity.
And now equity is the new buzzword. I hate the word equity. I hate it. I hate it. Right?
I can't stand it. Honestly, it's to the point where I don't even know what it means anymore.
Nobody does.
Nobody
knows what it means. Because when I hear people talk about equity lenses, and it's a joke. It is an absolute joke. And that's why I say I look at outcomes, right? Don't tell me about, all the flowery, pretty language, that's fine and dandy.
Yeah.
So what we have to do is understand the state we're in and understand that every institution in this state was built under a white supremacist model.
Yep.
And if we're ever going to change it, we have to look at it through a racially just process, right? We have to acknowledge that white supremacy is what built it, right? And if we don't acknowledge that, then we can't fundamentally change it. What we do is rearrange the chairs on the Titanic, right? And pat ourselves on the back and say, look at what we did, right? That's what we do. But the reality is that the systemic racism, the systemic inequality has gotten worse in Oregon in the time that I've lived here, not better.
Yeah.
And in fact, the inequity is so pronounced now, it's frightening. Because here we have kids that at 17, 18, have to decide, do I go to college or do I own a home one day? Can't do both, right? None of you got to take out loans, and you got 6-figure loans to go to college. Yeah. And we don't even talk to our kids about college because it's just not affordable, attainable, and quite frankly, the graduation rate, second to last in the nation for graduation rates?
Is it that bad?
It's that bad. But it's always been worse for black and brown kids in Oregon.
For sure.
But apparently, there are people that have built careers or are fixing these inequities, and they go 20, 30, 35, 40 years. The inequities are absolutely the same. They've made a bucket load of money, and now they're off in retirement. Yeah. Right? Oregon loves to hire people who look like us, but who won't actually upset the status quo.
So that's what I'm talking about. How do you plan to navigate disrupting the status quo when you'll be on the council of how many people?
5 people. So there are 4 commissioners and the mayor.
4 commissioners and the mayor.
Yes.
So how do you plan to influence those people who have, like you said, for the past however many years,
147 years,
have been dead set on fine-tuning white supremacy?
Yes.
Whether they know it or not. Yes. Whether they don't know what they're doing, but this is what you're doing.
But this is the outcome.
This is the outcome.
Right. Having me on the city council changes the questions that comes from the city council bench. It changes the people who are invited to provide expert testimony. It changes where city council meetings happen, right? I don't think you, the public, if I want to hear from you, should have to take off work or school, come downtown at 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday morning, wait for 2 hours after the paid city employees pontificate about whatever public policy deliberation is happening, and then give you 2 or 3 minutes of testimony, depending upon how much of the public they want to hear from that day, right? I think that that's absolutely disrespectful, and it flies in the face of a representative government. If I say I represent you, my job is to be out in the community talking to you, convening think tanks, right? Convening public forums where we're talking about these big public policy issues, right? Together, right? I am convinced that all these systemic problems that we have can be solved with true leadership. Yeah. We don't have true leadership today. We have people that talk good games, right? But at the end of the day, they only listen to the people they've always listened to, right? Politics is a very strange phenomenon, right? It takes bucket loads of money to get elected, right? In fact, $250,000 is what I was told I had to raise if I had any chance of winning my Portland City Council race, right? Now, that's a daunting task for anybody, much less people who don't have access to rich people, who don't have access to people that are going to write $10,000, $20,000 checks, right? It's a big task, right? But guess what? I am doing mine. I have over 900 individual donors today, right? From $5 to $5,000. My $5,000 donor is my ex-mother-in-law.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so that's who I am. And I
Talk
tell
about the house parties real quick.
the house parties are a way for people to be able to meet the candidate, ask questions, for me to raise money. I've raised the bulk of the money that I've raised.
So Joanne is having house parties around the city.
All over the city.
Whether it's a dinner,
whether it's
or
a
it's
dinner,
just coffee and donuts.
Whether it's coffee, and people have it all different times of day.
Yeah.
They'll have it at noon, right? So, you know, there will be snacks. But again, people have had formal dinners. And in fact, we're just starting to do open houses. We're going to be at Pizza Baron on April 18th on 122nd from 6 to 8 p.m.
Okay.
Because now we're starting to do events where we're just inviting the general public, right? Because at first it was about raising resources, recruiting volunteers, right? And getting my name out into communities where people didn't know me, right? Now it's about getting as many people as possible to know I'm the very best candidate for position 3 on Portland City Council, right?
Sure.
And so now, hopefully, we're going to get big crowds at these events, but that's the very first one coming up June 18th at Pizza Baron on 122nd. And so the house, and so again, because big time developers aren't having lunch with me and writing me $10,000 checks, I have to go to regular people, right? And people write. I have people that give me $5 a month. I have people that give me $250 a month, right? People are committed because they know the work I've done.
Yeah.
And they know I've done the work regardless of the title, regardless of the position I'm in, regardless of what the political will says or wind says, right?
Yeah.
Because politicians are flaky people. Politicians will wait until the political wind is moving in a direction and they'll jump on the bandwagon, right? Politicians rarely lead. Politicians have to be led by the people, right?
Yeah.
My expertise, and I think the jewel that I bring to the city council is to my core, I'm a grassroots organizer.
Yeah.
When I was a state legislator, I didn't forget who I represented. I knew who I represented. I represented those ex-felons, those low-income people, those people in transitional housing, right? I brought them to Salem. I had them testify at hearings, right? That's what will happen at the city council, right? It is not my job to represent your voice. It's my job to create the space for your voice to be heard, right? And then considered, right, in public policy decisions. Yeah. I could go on and on, so you better ask me another question. Because I'm
enjoying it, but no, I mean, I think that'll just be the big challenge, just like moving this mountain of a task, which is getting white people to understand what white supremacy, like how they're operating in it,
right,
and to get them to start moving out the way to let people actually affect some real change. If you say you're progressive,
right,
if you say you're about equity,
right,
this is how you do it. I've done it.
Right. Right.
You talked about it, but I lived it.
But I've lived it, right?
You know what I mean?
But here's the thing. I mean, it works on both sides. We have people that look like you and I who are gatekeepers.
Oh, yeah.
They think that they're entitled to all the dollars, and their job is to keep the other black people away.
Oh, yeah.
And they will do that as long as they keep getting their little tiny piece of the crumbs, right? Yep. They have mastered the art of sounding like they are representative of an entire community, right? Yet, if you look behind them, they traditionally show up by themselves, right? We as a community have to start calling that out publicly.
Oh, yeah.
We have to stop accepting the status quo. Roy J is a great example. Roy J, who used to be president of the African American Chamber, I used to laugh because he had about 20 businesses, right? He and I worked on Project Clean Slate, which was an effort to get people with convictions on their record cleaned up, whether they needed to pay fines so they could get their driver's license back,
You know people that went through clean slate and
right?
they helped them out.
Well, the first one, right?
Okay.
So there was clean slate that was huge. I mean, we couldn't even take all the people. People came from all over the country. It was free. We got judges and attorneys. We got community members to free come in, give people advice on what they needed to do. Got judges to assign community service, small fines, so that people could get their life back on track.
Yeah.
Roy J. saw a business-making opportunity and set up shop. Project Clean Slate. Started getting city money, state money, federal money. Started charging people who were trying to get their lives back on track $300 to come and listen to him pontificate for 4 hours.
Wow.
Public officials knew that he was dishonest and taking advantage of people who were desperate to get an opportunity to get their life back. Lo and behold, years later, find out the Department of Justice is investigating his misuse of money, spending it on his Mexican getaway, his Sun River getaway, right? Getting custom-made suits. Every elected official who gave him money knew. Because guess what? They got invitations to his Sun River hideaway and his Puerto Vallarta or Mexico getaway, right? Yeah. So I have watched this. I've lived 29 years. I've been here in Portland. And you see this and you think, there are a lot of people who say that they represent the community, but there are very few people who actually do.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I am proud to say I am in the latter. I actually represent the community.
No doubt.
Because most of the time, when I'm putting it on the line, there is no self-interest of mine that is met. Keith Notice is a great example. I met Fred Bryan, his dad, the week Keith Notice was killed.
Yep.
I met him on the worst week of his life. He found out his son was dead on TV. Fred Bryan said, I'm going to be on this corner every month, on the 12th of every month, to honor my son. Some days I'd go and it would be 4 of us. Some days I'd go, there'd be 20. Some days I'd go, there'd be hundreds of people, right? But Fred was on that corner in the cold, in the rain, in the snow, no matter what. In 90-degree weather, no matter what. Those bullets that killed Keith Notice also killed Fred Bryan because his heart gave out, right? In his fight for justice for his son. I am so proud to say, here we are in 2018, this vigil still happens once a month.
Really?
On the 12th of the month, on the corner of 6th and Northeast Halsey. Fred Bryant, Keith Notice, and now Christopher Kalanji are all honored at that space every month. It is the longest ongoing vigil in Oregon, ever, right? It is because the community stood with Fred, right? And that was kind of an interesting place because the mom forgave the place right away. I don't believe I've ever met Keith Notice's mom. But that's, every family deals with this differently. Kendra James' mom took her a decade to be able to publicly talk about what happened to her daughter, right? Now she's a strong voice, right, for police accountability, but she couldn't even speak about it for a decade, right? And so I am one of those people that in those worst moments of people's lives, that I get the phone call, can you come? I cry with them, I hug them, I try to help them find lawyers, right? I try to help them do what they want to do. There are other organizations that use people who have been harmed because they just don't know, right? They're in the middle of their grief, they just don't know. I do not show up when some other groups show up. I just because I know that my goal is to say, what does the family want, right? How can I help you? What is it that you need, right? And I do that because, not because I had an organization, not because somebody paid me, right? Because somebody had to, right? I know how many people in this community that are fearful of speaking up, right? Many are fearful of speaking up because of their background, what they did in the past, right? And are fearful that they're going to be retaliated against. Certainly, after the police kill a family member, they start targeting and harassing the rest of the family, right? To try to scare them into not filing lawsuits, right? With Aaron Campbell, we had to actually call the police chief and the mayor and say, would you please tell the police to knock it off, right? You cannot pull this family over every other day and pretend somehow you thought the headlight was out, blah, 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 right?
Wow.
Had to actually go directly to the top. And I'm a big fan of going directly to the top. So when you say, how am I going to do this? I will be having those real conversations. No one could ever bring me a document that said 90% of anything was African American, and I not question it in detail, right? When I know how many black people live in Oregon, right?
So that leads me to my next question. I mean, how do you plan, like what type of conversations or interactions do you want to have with Danielle Outlaw, the new police chief? Or I'm pretty sure you already met her.
I have. I've met with her a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I have to say, let me just say, I just love having a police chief named Outlaw, right? Isn't that the coolest thing, right?
That's something else.
When I first met her, it was hysterical. I had to say to her, I just have to tell you how cool it is having a police chief named Outlaw, right? She is a very, very smart woman. Yeah. But she has a uphill battle.
Yes.
As chief of Portland Police Bureau. There's only ever been 3 women that have held the title of chief in Portland Police Bureau. The first one, Penny Harrington, lasted a couple of months. The second one, Rosie Sizer, lasted a couple of years. But both of those were insiders that came up through the ranks and were picked, right? Chief Outlaw is an outsider, right? And she's from Oakland, right? And she's a woman, and she's black, right? And she's young.
How old is she?
42.
Okay.
Right? I know. I used to not think 42 was young.
Did she know what she was signing up for? I mean, did she just feel like...
So no, she told me that she did her research and she knew where she was coming.
Yeah.
But I have to say, she's been surprised a few times. Here's one thing that I'll share.
Because she's young, she probably just didn't... She might have seen Portlandian. She might be a fan of the show.
No.
I'm just joking.
So she was at a luncheon, right? One of these welcome lunches. There's been hundreds of them, right? She's at one of these welcome lunches. She's introduced to this woman. The woman shakes her hand and says, I have a question for you. And she goes, what? Right? Thinking, what's your vision for the police bureau? Blah, 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 right? You know what her question was? She wanted to know if her 2 sons had the same father. This is how polite Portland, progressive Portland plays out, right? The woman generally...
classic.
Right? Isn't it? It is absolutely classic, right? Yeah. Here's another one. She's at another event, and she's introduced to someone. After they shake hands, the woman looks at her and says, I've been to Africa. And Chief Outlaw was quicker than I would have been in that moment. Chief Outlaw said, I haven't. Tell me about it. Right? But these are the people who think they're progressive.
Oh, yeah.
They think that they're creating dialogue and relationship, right? And that is the scariest part about unwoke progressive people, right?
It's
because
scary.
They really believe in their core. I treat everybody the same. But could you imagine somebody going up to Larry O'Day and saying, you got 3 kids, so you all have the same baby mama, right? The thought would never occur to them, right? But a black woman in leadership, right? City Hall, there are some status quo people within City Hall that are absolutely petrified of me being on the Portland City Council.
Of course they are.
And they are petrified because they know the status quo will be disrupted. Chloe Daly, newest city commissioner, elected last election cycle that replaced Steve Novak, right? First time an incumbent had been taken out in quite some time. Needs help. She's a real progressive voice. The thing I love about her, she ran on affordable housing, and guess what? She's been working on affordable housing.
Okay.
And every affordable housing win that has come out of City Hall in the last year came out because of her work.
Wow.
Now, that's not her portfolio. Right? City councilors are assigned bureaus, right? And so basically, you manage a bureau, right? Or 2 or 3, whatever the mayor gives you.
Okay.
So the mayor gets to distribute bureaus, and as a commissioner, I get what I get. I see my job very differently than former city commissioners have seen their job. My job is to make sure that I have the best director for whatever bureaus I'm responsible for, that they understand that problems come to me first and we problem shoot. Because if I read about it in the paper, they should be looking for another job, right?
Yeah.
But after that, my job is not to micromanage the day-to-day operations of the city of Portland. My job is to make sure that we're passing policies that make sense and are being implemented in every corner of the city as intended. That's my job. That's how I see my job, right? Which means my job is not limited to whatever bureau I'm assigned to. I tell people don't live in silos. So, right, say I'm Transportation Commissioner, right? And you come to me because you have an issue having to do with permitting. If I say to you, well, I'm sorry, that's not my department, you got to go talk to so-and-so, I have failed you as your elected leader, right?
That's not my department.
My job,
this is a call center?
My job is to say, well, let's do a three-way conversation and see if we can troubleshoot this and find out where the problem is, right?
Yeah.
That's my job. My job is not to say I can only have this window. Having two people on the city council with that mindset, you're not the boss of me. I'm duly elected. I get to work on the issues I care about. I will manage the bureaus that I've been assigned, but I'm not limited to that. And you don't get to limit my interaction, right? Yeah. Chloe will have help. And let's see, Amanda will either change or be replaced in 2020 when she's up for election again, right? I really, really supported Amanda Fritz in her first 2 years, but I have not found her to be an effective visionary leader. She's way, way, way too in the weeds, right? I want her to be good. I thought that she could be, and maybe she still could be, but I think that she's given away her power. She used to say, well, the boys just won't let me. To me, as someone who has been in the Navy, someone who has run nonprofits, someone who's been in the legislative body, which is pretty male-dominated, for a woman in power to tell me that the boys won't let them is not it's not a rallying cry for me. That says to me, we got the wrong person in that seat, right? Because nobody's going to let me do anything. I'm going to do things because I can count to three, because I know I need 3 votes to do anything on the city council. Right. And here's the secret. No politician wants to consistently be on the losing end of a 3-2 vote. Yeah. Not if they want to get reelected, right? So, all of a sudden, we moved the city council a bit to the left. I have a great work relationship with Ted Wheeler. His staff hates me, but Ted Wheeler likes me, and that's good. I've known him since he ran for Multnomah County chair. I believe he is much more progressive than he appears based on what's come out of his office over the last year. I think his biggest stumbling block is that they rely on the law rather than common sense. His office, everything is through a legal lens. And we don't live through legal lenses. We live through, how does this impact the 60-year-old woman in my neighborhood on the freeway overpass begging for money? That's what I want to know. I don't want to know, right, what the legalese position is, right? It is, so it really his office frustrates me because they could be doing so much more, and they get bogged down because they've got lawyers with the best law degrees money can buy, the best political pedigrees money can buy, right? And no common sense when it comes to the city of Portland. No deep roots, no deep relationships, so people can sell them anything, and they believe it because they have nobody to check it with. Yeah. Which is why I respect Ted Willow so much, because he started having these monthly meetings because he knew I was not going to sugarcoat my conversations with him behind closed doors. But not just me, he invites a group of people in. Unfortunately, I'm the most vocal and outspoken. I come into every meeting with my own agenda, and he comes in with one, but I always supersede his agenda, right? Because when I come in, these are the issues that are on the forefront of people's mind in the community that are being harmed, right? And those are the things I want him to focus on. When I looked at his last agenda and he wanted to talk about the Jefferson and Grant basketball championship, I just ignored it, right? Because for me, I wanted
What did he talk about that for? Just to show that he was connected to the community or something?
Well, I mean, you're meeting with black people, so I guess black people want to talk about basketball, right? And maybe it's because the young man, what's his name, that's now doing housing for him, Cupid. Maybe Cupid thought that was a cool thing to put on the agenda. I don't know, but I've always ignored that agenda because I go in, and this last meeting, I was so angry, I only wanted to talk about the auditor's report.
Yeah.
I was like, this is criminal. And in fact, rather than giving more police, we need to actually halt any more resources going into the police bureau.
Yeah.
I shared with the mayor that I think they need to go on an austerity plan, which means that if they're not solving crime or preventing crime, whatever else, they need to stop until we have a deep analysis of every position within Portland Police Bureau and what they do. Because every time we get a sneak peek inside, we find out supervision doesn't happen, accountability doesn't happen, people talk a good game. Remember the national publicity, Portland police are going to stop keeping a gang list. The auditor found 1,000 people on a secret gang list inside Portland Police Bureau Gang Enforcement Unit, and they rotated every month the top 30 dangerous gangsters, except they had no criteria to label someone the most severe gangsters.
Of course they did. So what would Danielle be able to do with that?
So with that, now that's an interesting question, because I think what Danielle should do is disband the gang enforcement unit.
She has the power to do so.
She has the power to. They all work for her. As a paramilitary operation, they're supposed to do what the boss says.
Okay.
And so, quite frankly, she
can
controls their
dismantle
budget.
the whole thing if she wants.
She can there are 28 officers at a cost of $8 million that wouldn't know a gangster if they fell over one. Because with the outcomes that they've shown, clearly they have no clue what gangsters look like, right? Yeah. Because all they look at is color. And then the color has to prove that they're not a gangster. And their own data shows that, right? But when you have, I would be embarrassed. I would have at least tried to make up something that sounds kind of reasonable when a researcher said, well, how do you decide who to pull over? Well, we don't have any criteria. It's just based on our experience and our expertise, right?
All right. What gangs are even really active in Portland like that?
I gotta tell you, I'm from Baltimore.
Yeah.
So when I came here and people were talking about this gang problem we had, I was rolling out in the
You laughing. You like,
I was like, I can show you gangs. Okay?
Right.
And
that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
So there was Bloods and Crips when I was coming up in the 90s. That was real.
Yes.
Okay.
And Columbia, right. And Columbia Villa, right. Yes.
Okay. So
but there was one person dying at Columbia Villa, and all of a sudden gangs were rampant. Now let me tell you how that happens. Do you know that the police bureau has what they call public information officers that all day long write press releases to the media to tell them who's committing crimes, where the crimes are happening, and how dangerous various communities are, right? If we, the community, had full-time PR people to paint a picture to the media, right? Which, as we know, is lazy nowadays. They don't actually go out and talk to people, right? They take the press release and read it as if it's news, right? When I do trainings, I tell people that you need to be able to unpack what you hear on the evening news and read in a newspaper. For example, when you hear the teaser, gang shooting, story at 11, what's the first visual you see? Black male, somewhere between 14 and 24 years old. That's the visual, right? Because we have been conditioned that that's what a gang member looks like, right? That's the conditioning.
But even when they say gang shooting, it's not even gang member. Like, there would be people that I know personally, they're not in the gang.
Absolutely right. When I first started working on this, I would be in the room with police and I say, please tell me what a gangster look like, right? Because I need to be able to see, I need to be able to get out of the way if I'm actually walking in a gang territory, right? You know what they were telling me? Well, it's the one officer who was actually in charge of the gang enforcement unit at that time. Told me if they wear their hat sideways, they're part of this gang. If they wear it backwards, they're part of this gang. I said, isn't that just fashion? Isn't that just hip hop fashion?
That's all it is.
It's like, how would you, if they wear a handkerchief out of this pocket? They had all, because they create the narrative.
But the thing, and they believe it though. But what it is, they're just...
Well, no. Their job is to sell fear to white homeowners. The police whole process is the more fear you sell to white homeowners, the more pressure they put on the city council to hire more police. It's a very... In fact, now, if you call any police precinct, here's the message you'll get. due to staffing shortages, we don't have anyone to answer the phone. And then they go through a 10-minute list of, if you want this, call this number. If you need this, call that, right? Any precinct you call.
Mm-hmm.
The police are out doing community meetings now at neighborhood associations because they want to help people identify public safety issues in their community. You know what they're doing? They're out organizing homeowners to actually put pressure on the city council to hire more cops. I have seen this. This happens every budget cycle. I am appalled that they use public funds on public time in public places that have been designed for community voices, and they use it to scare people for their own benefit. My national night out in my old neighborhood, I used to live on 167th in Southeast Stark. I was at a neighborhood night out. Officer came and said, Max is bringing crime to your neighborhood. Gangsters are living in cells in these apartments right at the Max line. And so if you see somebody you don't know, you call the police. I put my hand up. 10,000 new people moved here in the last year. How you gonna know them all? Right? Right? I mean, it was just the most ludicrous thing.
Yeah.
But people who aren't paying attention every day, most white middle-class people trust explicitly the police because their lived experiences, they're there to protect them, right?
Well, they are there to protect them.
But that's
to
not
protect them.
That's not most people of color's lived experience.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
They're there to protect them, not to protect us.
So they don't even question it, right?
Of course, because they know that they're looking out for their best white supremacist interests.
Yes.
So just like Oregon has been doing since its inception.
Since its inception.
Hey, keep those black people away from me. Yeah.
Never missed a beat, right?
It's on autopilot.
Yes.
Really quickly, I want to get into a question from one of my listeners.
All right.
They say, how will you spearhead an advanced warning system list? I don't know if that's a thing or if that's something you can create of low-income properties going on the market using the money from the $258 million bond measure.
Housing bond,
yeah, for low-income renters, especially since there doesn't seem to be a mechanism for knowing when an apartment complex or house is on the market to be bought.
Yes, that happened recently.
Holgate Manor Property Management. Okay.
So I participated in a press conference this week. I was trying to think of what day this is. Yeah, this week still.
Yeah.
At Holgate Manor. There are 82 families who live in Holgate Manor. The original owner bought the property as a place for recent immigrant and refugees and other low-income people to be able to create community. Owner died, right? All of a sudden, a California investor makes an offer to buy the property.
Of course, somebody from California did, yeah.
All of a sudden, tenants are getting these notices that say if they move out by the end of the month, they'll get extra $1,200, right? Because the goal is just to get them all out of there as quickly as possible, right? Now, in this complex, most people, English is not their first language. So the fact that you would put notices like that to residents who the bulk of them don't speak English, is making sure that they're not getting good information on what their rights are, right? The fact that a California developer could find out that this property was about to be on the market, I mean, a California investor could find out, and Portland Housing Bureau had no idea, it's absolutely ludicrous, right? So, what I think is we need to actually talk to that California investor and find out how he got a heads up, right? So that we can be ahead of the curve. Now, right now, the tenants are advocating that Portland Housing Bureau buy that property, renovate it, and keep it permanently low income, right? That would be the right thing to do. The city of Portland is not acting like there's a housing emergency, right? We're just kind of building housing the way we always have, with a couple of caveats, giving developers some real sweet giveaways to add 3 or 4 affordable housing units, right? We will never build our way out of the housing crisis. And I say this everywhere I go. By the way, we didn't have a housing crisis until white people could no longer afford to live in the city of Portland. Between 2000 and 2010, 10,000 black families were displaced from inner Northeast.
Oh, yeah.
Not a peep out of anybody, right?
Of course not.
And you should know
Mm-hmm.
that in all white audiences and all retired audiences, my message is the same, right? So people know that what they see is what they get. And so some people are giddy about that, and some people are really freaked out that the status quo is going to change. Because I'm not a status quo kind of person, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I have to do. I have to be the one that says, so I want to know how many properties today are owned by government that we could just lock into low-income housing, permanent low-income housing, without a developer, we don't need a developer to actually just lock down land that we can use later that is already owned by the government to build future affordable housing.
Is there, it seems like there's more incentive for the government, the local government, to bring the developers in. Is that correct? Is there more incentive to have them come in there and build these luxury condos as opposed to have low income because the government will have to spend money for the low income?
No, so here, I have learned so much on this campaign trail. I used to think, why would anybody build $1.25 million condos on North Williams Avenue, right?
Yeah.
A, and B, who the heck would buy a $1.2 million condo? I have spoken with a lot of developers because my goal isn't to demonize any segment of the community that I need to help us fix this problem, right? Yeah. I have learned that you know who pays for the street improvements? Developers. I talked to a developer yesterday that told me he had to spend $450,000 on street improvements in order to build his property. This developer told me that he was buying up empty lots that had been vacant in inner Northeast forever, right? Nobody wanted them. He got them cheap, and he just was buying them up because he wanted to do housing different. I mean, he wanted to actually be part of renovating the community, right? But when you get to the city's permitting process, the city's permitting process is all about the city making money, right? If you, as a private business owner, have to have $450,000 to do street improvements before you can get a permit to build your apartment, are you building low-income affordable units, or are you building units that you can recoup some of your costs?
So that's what I'm saying. How do we, because it seems like only those people can survive in this market, how can we even potentially create low income if there's no incentive to do it?
See, I want to bring those people to the same table. I envision a table where houseless people are, where developers are, where nonprofit developers are, other community members of interest, and actually figuring that out in a very public way, in a way that invites opinion and input, right? Because I don't think it's fair that any one developer gets all kind of tax breaks and all kind of bennies from the government when they're building properties that are going to end up in $1.2 million, right? I am so appreciative of what I've learned, right? Across the board, everybody hates the Bureau of Development Services, where you have to go to get permits, whether you're improving your home, putting a sign outside your bed. Everybody hates them because the process adds 1 year and at least $10,000 to any improvement that you're doing. Now, if we are about supporting small businesses and helping small businesses to thrive, why do we have I don't call them by their new name, the former PDC. Also, I'll call PP, but I won't call them because they haven't been prosperous for anybody that I know, right? Great example. So there's a new project, Broadway project that formerly PDC put out a request for qualifications bid for, which means contractors around the country have an opportunity to put a package together and say, this is what we're going to do. There were 4 responders. 1, the most diverse development team you'd ever imagine, including Andrew Colas and Maxine Fitzpatrick, right? Yeah. Right? Superstar team, right? Do you know that formerly PDC, did not even set them up for an interview, told them that they didn't make the cut. All 3 firms that they're going to interview are all out of town. Denver, San Francisco, and I forget the third city, right?
Yeah.
So here's again, it's like they were reorganized to focus on Portland and not focused on bringing. Now, who in their right mind would have this dream team of local developers and they not even get an interview? To me, and in fact, I wrote the mayor yesterday and said, isn't it stupid, right? It's like, how can this be, right?
So, somebody's getting paid.
So here's the thing.
What's the
if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And most of us aren't at the table. Mm-hmm. Or one or two of us are there, but their role is to be gatekeepers and just make sure that there aren't too many of us coming trying to get a piece of that pie, right? So we just got to bust that open, right? We got to call it out in public, right? And my job is to know who's out there who has the expertise and bring them to the table, right? I stopped TriMet from signing a contract with Portland Patrol, Inc. Again, not my job, not in my bailiwick, not even on my agenda. But all of a sudden I realized TriMet was about to give $4.2 million annually to Portland Patrol, Inc., which is a private security firm started and managed by former Portland police officers and ex-military personnel. A no-bid contract of $4.2 million annually to provide security on MAX and bus lines, right? I called up Bruce Warner.
How recent was this?
Oh, just a couple of months ago.
Okay.
And I made him come to the NAACP Executive Committee. We beat him up, right?
Yeah.
And they were supposed to come to the general meeting, but I don't know if they did to the next general meeting because I wanted the general membership to beat him up, right? I said to him, I didn't see an RFP. I didn't see a request for proposals for security service on Max. He got very quiet. Bruce Warner, the board chair of TriMet, got very quiet. Then he finally said, oh, it was a single source. I said, a single source? You single source with a private security firm for $4.2 million of public money? And here's the insidious part. So the DAs no longer prosecute fare evaders because the DAs in Washington County, Multnomah County, and Clackamas County, which is the service area of TriMet, all have triple overrepresentation of people of color of the ones who are sanctioned for not having paid their $2.50, right?
Of course.
And here's how it works. As most people know, fare inspector comes on. The fare inspector gets to decide whether you get a citation or whether you get a ticket that says you're interfering with public transportation, right? Interfering with public transportation is a crime, punishable, possibly by jail time. It is a crime. It's a misdemeanor crime, but it is a crime, right? Now, most people, they get a citation, like a parking ticket, right? I found out last night that parking ticket is now $367, which is
for the max?
For a $2.50 fare you didn't pay. If you get a ticket for not being able to prove you paid your fare, a judge in Multnomah County told me last night that it's $300 and some odd dollars.
Oh,
right? But that's only if you actually can afford to take off work, have transportation to get downtown, blah, 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 blah. Right?
A parking ticket is only like $40 or $50.
What's that?
A parking ticket is only like
$40. Actually, a parking ticket's $44.
$44.
I know because I get lots of them. Because going to public meetings and people pontificate, and my meter runs out and I get a ticket, right? So anyway, I called Bruce Warner. I found his cell. I pretty much stalked him because I thought, wait, this is just another way to target our kids, right? And this time it'll be out of the public eye. Because it won't be prosecuted through the legal system. There will be an administrative judge process, which means we have no access to the data because they're hired a private firm that has no responsibility to tell the public who they stopped, what the fines were, nothing, right?
White supremacy.
Portland Business Alliance downtown right now with their Clean and Safe program, they harass and target people of color, houseless people on a regular basis, and we can't get data. Because again, we give them public dollars to serve a private business purpose, and we have no accountability over what they do. And so when I'm in there, if they want security downtown, they should pay for it themselves. Why the heck is the city putting in tax dollars for businesses to feel safe downtown? We already give you cops.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we paying you additional money?
Because the cops have to make sure the gangsters are off the streets.
The cops say the gangsters are down in East Portland, right? Everything they used to say about inner Northeast, they now say about East Portland, my neighborhood.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
And the only difference is the complexion of the people in my neighborhood have changed over the last decade.
Mm-hmm. And we're the only ones that have gangs, and there's no white gangs whatsoever.
I keep asking, with the rise in white supremacy, how is it even possible that white gangs aren't like out of control?
Because
right?
that they're not out of control?
I mean that the numbers aren't just skyrocketing.
Well, that's the thing though. We're in Portland where it's pretty much all white, so you don't have any opposition except for a few pockets of town.
Yes.
Because I mean, it was more people of color in the city.
Yes.
Back when we first,
yes.
you know what I mean,
right.
coming up in the 90s. Now
yes.
everybody's, and they're just there by themselves.
And unfortunately, in East Portland and my community,
mm-hmm.
you never know what police agency you're dealing with. There's
mm-hmm.
Multnomah County Gang Enforcement Task Force, there's Portland Police, there's Gresham Police,
mm-hmm.
right? There's Homeland Security. So they all walk around looking with the same kind of uniform. You have no idea. There's ICE. You just don't know who's who, right? It is. So once again, I live in a community. When I lived in the inner Northeast,
mm-hmm.
we were oversaturated with police, and no other community services were available. Once again, now I live in East Portland. We're oversaturated with police. You can get police anytime because
mm-hmm.
Police will show up,
mm-hmm.
right? But ask for support services to help somebody like get through an alcohol and drug treatment program. Like, oh, we ain't got money for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But by golly, we got money for police.
Money to keep
right?
these black and brown folks down.
Well, and to just, I believe that there are a majority of Portlanders that believe in justice,
mm-hmm.
believe in giving everybody a fair shake,
mm-hmm.
but most don't know the systemic inequalities that have actually been built into our systems from the beginning,
mm-hmm.
right? And so if you look at graduation rates, people say, well, they just don't study hard enough, right? So you have to really understand the history to understand how far behind black and brown kids start off,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's amazing how many are successful,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on the deck that's stacked against them, right? And I have to say nowadays, with the term people of color, African Americans aren't even talked about unless we're talking about disparate outcomes.
Yep.
And to me, we have become invisible.
Yep.
We are the invisible minority today,
mm-hmm.
right, in Oregon, because because we are.
That's why I get really disturbed when people just start using that term, people of color.
Yes.
They start talking about diversity this and diversity that.
Yes.
So you can be pro-diversity but still anti-black.
Yes.
You could be pro-gay, you can be pro-whatever, whatever,
right.
but you're still the source of what you really hate, what you really,
right.
Black people, all right, we don't like them, but everybody else under that diverse umbrella, under that whatever, is fair game.
I mean, and quite frankly, it is so easy, right, for a white liberal to say, I'm like, I love everybody, right? I have friends from all kind of different communities.
Mm-hmm.
I ask people, so what do you do for fun? Where do you hang out, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a small business owner who does a lot of training around diversifying boards and diversifying staffs, I get the calls. We need to diversify our board. Can you send me some black people? Right?
Flat out, that's what they say.
Right. I mean, they said more flowery, right? But that's the gist of what they say, right? And my response is no.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I go, what have you done on your board to prepare your board to be more diverse? Because you have to know, you can't just bring a person and have them represent the entire race, right? That's ever lived. And so the good news when you work for yourself is you get to choose what work you take. And so there are people I just won't work for because they just want a shortcut. They just want to put a black person on there and ask them all their black questions, right? I've been in Oregon long enough.
You've been in plenty of those
I've been in plenty of those meetings. In fact, when I was working for Bev Stein, I remember asking someone at a meeting because I was just so sick of people telling this particular meeting of elected officials and other opinion leaders what the black community wanted, right? And I had assumed they had talked to one of three people: Sam Brooks, Ron Herndon, and there was another person. And I knew it was one of those three that they had talked to. I leaned across the table and said, tell me, who's the white man in Northwest Portland I can talk to find out what white people think? You should have saw the color drain out of the gentleman's face. You should have saw he was just speechless. It took him a moment to be able to create a complete sentence, right?
Yeah.
And I went back and told my boss, Bev Stein, that I did it because I just wanted to make sure I closed the loop. Hey, just want you to know, hey, if you get a phone call, this is what I said. And I loved her because she always had my back. Yeah. Loved her. Yeah. And so, but I mean, that's how insidious it is, right?
Oh yeah.
Here you are in a room with people with lived experience, but your privilege allows you to think you know better because you've had a conversation with one of three black men, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And so you got this because you're friends with Von Herndon, so you know exactly what's going on in the black community. Really?
Right.
Right? Based on what? But people get away with that, right? Because in polite Portland, we wouldn't dare question that because we know their heart's in the right place, right? We know they mean well.
Right.
And meaning well hasn't gotten us anywhere.
No.
And so what we need are not people who are just going to maintain the status quo, right? We need people who are going to actually push for real outcomes, right? The older I get, the less I care about what they say they're going to do. I'm just looking at the end result. Right. Did you achieve it?
Right.
And if you haven't achieved it, why would you contract with the same person next time? Mm-hmm. And the time after that? And why is there no penalties for actually not reaching the goals that you've set? Yeah. Here's a great example. A couple of years ago, City of Portland contracted for 200,000 hours of electrician hours, right? Mm-hmm. African Americans got 10.3 of those hours. 200,000 hours, 10.3, which means one person got a little bit of overtime. That's it, right? It, yeah. But when it was presented to the city council, it was presented as we were very successful in reaching our minority women and emerging small business goals. We came in at 23%. When I challenged it with the mayor at the city council meeting in public, I said, that's not helpful for me. I want to know how many black people got work, how many Latinos, how many Native Americans, how many women. I want the demographic. I want all the breakdown, right? Giving me this clump category tells me nothing, right? Yeah. You know what he told me? We've had the software for a decade in the city of Portland and have never used it to disaggregate the data so that you know exactly. And you know why? Because they don't want to know.
They don't. Well, they don't want to tell the truth.
No, and I have said for the last couple of years, I find it fascinating that the sitting commissioners don't actually read what they're voting on. I can't tell you how many millions I've saved the city from spending because I actually read what they were voting on. And so to have staff people, Mike Reese was the worst. Former police chief, Portland police chief Mike Reese, and current Multnomah County sheriff. He was the absolute worst. Yeah. I stopped the city council from spending $840,000 to buy body cams because he told the city council that he was just looking, right? This proposal is just about us looking to see what's out there. I know we have no policy yet. We have no plans to purchase, but this is just for us. And I'm sitting there reading the document. At an affirmative city council vote, the RFP will be released and blah, 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 blah. I had to go up and read it to the city council. Yeah. Hysterical. And Commissioner Nick Fish, I mean, this is how insane this is, right? Now, I run nonprofits. I run my own small business. This is not rocket science, right? RFP and letter of inquiry are two very different things. A letter of inquiry is when you're looking. When you send out a request for proposals, that means you're buying. You've set the expectation that you're going to purchase something, right? Because no one spends the time that you spend on a request for proposal if you're just looking, right? That's why a letter of inquiry fills in for that when you're just looking. So Commissioner Nick Fish had to call purchasing and have the poor woman who drew the short straw come and sit next to me at the city council. And he said to her, have you been listening to the city council meeting? She said, yes, I have. Did you hear what Miss Hardesty said? Yes, I did. Do you have any comments? Miss Hardesty is correct. Thank you very much. Right? It's like, do they not read Or do they not have staff that are supposed to prepare them for their city council?
Well, I guess there's no repercussion. It's just money in the budget, right?
And it's not their money.
And it's not their money.
Right.
They're not spending their money. They're
They're
spending
their money.
everybody else's money.
Right,
so
right.
they can care less.
Spending $3.84 billion annually, and you're not even reading what you're voting on? I mean, when I was a legislator, I took stacks that high home at night because I knew I had to vote on it the next day, and I wasn't voting on anything I hadn't actually read.
Well, look, like I said, people don't want competition and they don't want to do the work. That's why.
They don't.
That's why Salzman.
Yes.
That's why. Just like you
16
said.
years, right? 16 years.
He said, "What she came? First of all, she came to my office
Right.
and told me what
Yes.
she was about to do.
Right, right.
And I've seen her work.
Yes.
So I know that she's gonna do it.
And he knew what I can do. He knows I can put thousands of people in the street. He knows I can fill up the city council chambers. So he knows that I talk well.
So
and
y'all,
I have data.
I need y'all to understand. Ann Hardesty, she puts in the work.
I do.
And she has these people running when they find out that she's coming to compete for their spot because they know that she's gonna take it.
That's right.
So I want y'all to don't let that pass. Of all the things that you've heard in this, do not let that pass you by. Joanne is putting in the work and she's going to get things done.
Yes.
She's going to read the paperwork.
Yes.
She's going to save the city money, and she's going to make change.
Yes.
It's going to happen.
It is definitely going to happen. And I have to say, there's a lot of excitement about my campaign.
Yeah.
Just earlier today, we had our canvassers going out. There's only 38 days left. And in fact, there is, 20 days before, so it's only 18 days left to register to vote. So if their listeners aren't registered, they can go online, go to the Multnomah County Elections homepage. It is easy. You can do it in less than 2 minutes, right? If you've moved, you've got to update your voter registration. If you have changed your name, you need to update your voter registration. Do not wait till the last minute because it's coming fast. 38 days are going to go like that.
Real quick. So I appreciate everything that you've given.
Thank you so much.
I know you're up against the clock because you got to be somewhere at 6
Yes,
o'clock.
I do.
So I do this this last segment is called the Fab Five. 5 questions that I ask everybody.
Okay.
So question number 1, who is your favorite artist and what song or album made you fall in love with that musical artist? Yeah.
Luther Vandross, Here and Now.
Luther, okay.
Luther's my man, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Luther
That's an easy one, yeah.
So that was quick.
That's quick. I
Didn't take
had
you
to
no
think
time.
about that, right?
Last person like, I got 3 people. I
Nah.
got 4 albums. Like, no, we got time.
Luther.
All right. Is there a movie that has affected your outlook on life?
Oh my gosh, the Black Panther movie,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
It was like, I did not know how much I would enjoy that movie. I mean, I thought it would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like Black Universe, right?
Right.
I had no idea when I saw the bad women
Oh,
warriors. I was like, yes, right?
Uh-huh.
I thought, man, what this will do for 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 teenagers, what this will do for their image of what's possible, right? I love that. I wish that had been made like 30 years ago.
I know.
That's gonna go down as one of my all-time favorites.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Easily. I mean, my son is 8. My daughter is 3. I took him twice.
Nice, good, right?
I took him Friday night and Saturday night. And Saturday I was like, hey y'all, get dressed. We going to go see Black Panther again.
That's gonna be one of those that we're gonna have to once it's available for sale, that will be in a home library.
Oh, for sure.
It's got to be in a home library.
Every black family.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Required viewing. Yes.
Right. Question number 3. When you start to feel overwhelmed, and I'm sure you are, all the time doing all this stuff, but how do you de-stress?
I check out. I take a couple of days off. I don't answer email, phone calls, respond to. I just go. Right. I either go to the mountains, go to the water.
Nice.
Sometimes I go to Vegas. I just totally disconnect, right? And I am really, really good at disconnecting because I know that I need to do that, right? You can't be immersed in this kind of stuff 24/7 without doing the self-care. So for me, it's about just taking a couple of days, and it's just all about me. So nails did, massages,
all of that.
Just all about me for those 2 days.
That's good. So you got your self-care routine down. You know how to do it.
I do. And in fact, I have friends that will call me to say, look at your nails, right? Because for me, it's like if my nails look bad, that means I'm not doing self-care, right? And so it's a good check-in. I have people who remind me that I have to do that.
Yeah, that's good. Question number 4, what book would you recommend everyone to read right
now? The New Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm amazed that there are people on the planet that haven't read that book yet.
Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, that book moved. It didn't just move me. I read that book as part of a book club, right? Mm-hmm. And it's only like 6 chapters, so it's like that's it. 6 chapters, and we would meet for an hour, maybe hour and a half. Mm-hmm. Was it over 6 weeks? I think it was like every other Saturday for a couple hours, and we discussed the chapter, and then we'd go back. That book, when I finished it, when I got to the end, I had to do something.
Yeah.
So guess what I did? Worked with a group of people. We did 2 town halls, community town halls at PCC Cascade, just to talk about the book and what we learned from the book and how to connect the book to what was happening in Oregon. Yeah. Both of those town halls happened like within 3 months of each other, and both had over 100 participants. Then we brought Michelle Alexander to town. In partnership with PCC Cascade, standing room only at Emmanuel Temple Church. Yeah. We had a community fair where I brought in community members who are working on the issues that were addressed in Michelle's book. Yeah. Michelle Alexander was fabulous. You could actually go online and see the entire program. Okay. I love, there's a picture that shows Michelle Alexander looking at me intently while I'm talking. I love that picture. Yeah. If I'd have been able to reach her, I'd have put that on my campaign material, right? But have to get permission before you do that. Right. So I think that's one of those, no new information, but laid out in a way that was understandable and allowed people to connect the dots, to understand that none of this is accidental.
Now, I purchased that book, but I haven't read it.
Okay.
So I feel bad.
No.
But my reason for not reading is because, have you seen the 13th documentary on Netflix?
Yes.
So I felt like after I watched 13th, like, do I really need to read
this book? That really meant to go there? Well, I mean,
But I hear that the book still has some stuff that, like...
What I loved about her was the intense research she did, right? So it wasn't just, this was the outcome of X, Y, Z. But she knew when she was writing that book that there would be people trying to discredit her research.
Right.
So her footnotes are better than anybody's footnotes I've ever seen in a book, right? Yeah. She actually has everything laid out. There's another book, it's going to go out of my head, but hopefully I'll think about it as you get to question 5.
Okay. Question number 5. What message do you want... Now, you won't be able to enjoy it. You won't be there to enjoy it, but what message do you want communicated at your eulogy?
I want my eulogy to say that Joanne did the work. Joanne showed up for communities that had no voice. And she did it regardless of who was paying attention and who got credit. If that's said in my eulogy, I would feel like, this has been a good one. Simply put.
Joanne did the work.
She did the work. She showed up with no self-interest.
Well, you doing it.
And no care about who got the credit.
Word. Yeah. You doing it. And I think, as selfless as you are, I think that's going to help propel you to the next level. Because what you're putting out into the atmosphere, into the universe, like it's going to come back. It is coming back.
It is coming back. Oh my gosh. If you saw the diversity of people who are just giddy. I mean, diversity in race, age, gender. It has just been overwhelming how many people are like, we gotta do this, right? And we do. Yeah. This is our opportunity, right? To really start changing that dynamic, right? Because the reality is if we keep using those pretty words and getting the same results we've always gotten, then our people will continue to suffer. Yeah. And there's too many riches in this community for that. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you did this.
No doubt. I appreciate you so much for doing this.
Hey, we'll do this again.
Yeah, we'll make it happen after you get elected,
right? Yes, absolutely.
So election, what's the election day again?
May 15th.
May 15th, y'all.
Yes, and ballots will be coming out in 2 weeks.
Coming out soon.
Pamphlets will be coming out in 2 weeks. And then, it's just all
and
about.
vote as soon as as you get your ballot, because
I'm a big
people
fan.
are influenced by those numbers, by those early numbers.
Yes,
Don't be fooled. Like it matters. It really matters.
I can tell you today that I'm already ahead because I got an email from a couple that were going to be out of the country, and they wanted to make sure that I knew that they called Multnomah County Elections Office, let them know they were going to be out of the country, and were allowed to vote early, and they wanted me to know that they both voted for me.
Okay.
So I'm already in the lead.
Yeah,
so
already leading.
Just need your help to get over the finish line.
Yeah, man. So make sure y'all vote for Joanne because she's doing some good work out here. Really.
Thank you.
So thank you once again.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
y'all for listening. Once again, this is the Sox and Sandals Podcast, where society, culture, history, and religion collide, and we unapologetically discuss our worldviews. Joanne is unapologetically kicking ass and taking names. Got incumbents leaving office because they know that she's coming. So I want y'all to be on the right side of history and vote for Joanne. All right? Grace and peace to y'all. Any last words, Joanne?
My last word is I also want your help in changing how governance happens in the city of Portland. It's not just about voting for me, but it's about working with me so that we change this.
Let's do it.
All right.
We'll make something happen.
All right.
All right.
Love it.
Holla at y'all later. Peace.
Take care.
Boom. That was awesome. That was